Hi everyone, welcome back to chemistry. In this video, I want to do a brief overview of the ACS final exam just to kind of give you a sense of what to expect and to kind of talk about why we take it in the first place. I know also that the standardized exams in general can give students a little bit of anxiety, and so I'm hoping by the end of this video to sort of get rid of some of that anxiety for you. So, quick overview of what this exam actually is. So, this is a standardized exam that's written by the American Chemical Society, or the ACS, and it's taken by students across the nation for Chemistry 121. It consists of 60 multiple choice questions, and you have an hour to complete it. So I want to talk about standardized exams, what they are and also what they are not, because I think it's important to kind of keep these exams in perspective. What these are is they're helpful to better understand how our courses at TCC are doing compared to the nation. And that's really why we have students take them, is to make sure that we are teaching the correct curriculum, that we're spending enough time on certain topics, and really to reflect on our own teaching and make any improvements as needed. But what these standardized exams are not is they're not always accurate representations of what you know and are able to do, right? They're representing what you can do under a very specific set of circumstances on one day in your life. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. They're not designed for you to get every single question right. And for that reason, they are scaled heavily in your favor. And we're going to talk about what that means. But I think that's kind of important to kind of recognize what these exams are for and where they kind of fall short. All right, so what are some tips that I have for these exams? Well, like any exam, I think it's important to study your old quizzes or homework or your old exams. And when I say study, I specifically mean redo the problems, right? That's a more active form of studying, and it can be more helpful. It's really easy to look at old stuff and be like, oh, yeah, I still remember how to do this. But sometimes that's easy to convince yourself of, and it's not totally true. So redo them, and that's the best way, I think, to study. Another good thing to do is to study with classmates, right? We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we can kind of help fill in any gaps and stuff like that. Another big tip is to try not to panic. I know that these can be anxiety producing, right? Like I said, but you can miss a lot of questions on this and still score in a really high percentile. So try to kind of keep that in mind. Another huge tip is to answer every question. For this exam, there is no penalty for wrong answers. So, what do I mean by that? You can answer a question incorrectly, and instead of subtracting points like something like the SAT did, I don't know if it still does that, but when I took it, it would subtract a certain amount of points for wrong answers. This one's not like that. So if you get an answer wrong, you just don't get the credit for it, right? But there's no penalty for it. So it's in your best interest to answer every single question, even if you don't know it. If you do need to guess, I would try to narrow it down. Narrow down at least a couple answer choices if you can. There's always at least one that makes no sense, right? So try really hard to kind of identify that if you can. All right, and then the last piece that I want to talk about in this video is grading, and I'm sure you're all curious about that. So remember, just before we talk about the ACS, remember that I'll replace your lowest exam score with your final exam score if you do better on it. So if you get an 80% on the final exam and you got a 60% on your lowest exam score, that 60% would now become an 80%. And then the lowest possible score that you can receive on the ACS is 50%. So that means that if you just go into the exam and you just bubble in answers willy-nilly, the lowest grade you can possibly get on that exam is 50%. So that's pretty good. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is how we actually calculate your score, because I said that it's scaled in your favor, and we actually have an equation that we use to do that. So the equation is that your score is going to equal whatever your ACS percentile was, plus 100 minus your ACS percentile times 0.5, and that 0.5 piece is what really puts it into it's what really scales your score. So say you got 48, and this is the first example on the handout I gave you guys about this exam. So say you got 48 out of 60 questions correct. That puts you in the 99th percentile. So already notice that's a pretty high percentile, right? So that puts you in the 99th percentile nationally. And then using the above formula that you see here, what you'll notice is that your score is actually going to be 99.5 out of 100, which is a really high score. Let's take a look at another example. Say you got 22 out of 60. That puts you in the 22nd percentile. Well, when you do this calculation, right, your 22nd percentile plus 100 minus 22 times 0.5, that's still going to give you a 61 out of 100 on the exam. So that's what I mean by the score is scaled. Okay, so you, and then of course the lowest score that you can get on this exam is still 50 out of 100. Okay, so I really hope that kind of puts your mind at ease. Remember, you can miss quite a few on this exam and still score really high. Okay, all right. I hope that helps, and I will talk to you in class, and have a good rest of your day.